Stay tuned, stay tuned, stay tuned. I am here with the coach, John Brent.
And I'm here with the vet, Mr. N. Griffin.
Man, it is so it's an interesting day today, to be honest, Coach.
Yeah.
It's good to have you down here, but we're going to talk about something that we hope we would never have to talk about, and that's going to deal with the shooting of Uvalde. We kind of waited a little bit to decompress this all because everybody, I hear a lot of this. I want action. I want action. I want action.
Sure.
And I agree. We all want action. But until we can get some people to codify in law, it's kind of hard to have action. And I'm going to throw something out there, Coach, to be honest, is, nobody has solved world hunger yet. Nobody has solved poverty, and nobody's solved the homeless.
Or cancer.
Or cancer. Because they're all in the category, there's no one answer.
That's correct.
There's no one answer. It will take a conglomerate of answers. And I will kick this back real quick, and then we're going to get moving on it. But in World War II, some will say, well, we dropped the bomb, it won the war. Well, that was the final stake, but that wasn't what won the war. What won the war was about 5 to 10 other different things. Right. America's industrial base, learn how to utilize the radar properly, changing how we do water convoys in the North Atlantic, changing our tactics in the Pacific, and then the culminating event happened to be
one of my
the
favorite,
bomb.
the code breakers.
Yeah, and the code breakers. So all of those had a piece in it. If you would have just done one, you would not have won because we would have never got to the bomb because we had already been wiped out. If you didn't have the Lend-Lease program, we would have been wiped out. So I think when we start talking about how do we fix this problem in America that we have with something that's guaranteed to us by the Second Amendment, we have to really dive into not one thing fix all. So I'm going to throw it over to you here real quick, but we just had this school shooting down in southern Texas, down in Uvalde. As we're making this, just the night before, we just had Tulsa shooting. We've had a couple other shootings that involve people predominantly, not the Tulsa one, but the one that was in Uvalde, one was in Buffalo, one was in Wisconsin, and one was in California, all within a month's time frame, involved young men who are still teenagers, 18 to 20 years of age.
You and I talk a lot when something like this happens. I go back to the original, what I wanted to do, and then you and I decided to collaborate was we wanted to have an avenue to get some of these things off our chest 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And you and I connected and said, you know what, let's do a podcast because we really didn't feel like we had a place to discuss these things. So when something like this happens, one of the first things that I see is a text from you, or the first thing I see, I want to send one is you, like, what is going on? And we look at these types of situations differently. That's why it's the coach and the vet. In this situation, it's a military person that doesn't get too emotional with a civilian guy like me is full of emotion. And I think over the last 3 weeks for sure, there's been a whole lot of emotions from citizens when you see, innocent people being shot in a grocery store just buying groceries.
Yeah.
And the most unbelievable thing that anybody could understand is 8, 9, 10-year-old kids in a school and a bunch of 10-year-olds getting killed and teachers trying to protect them. And we'll get into, what transpired there. But I believe if that doesn't bring out emotion in you, then there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to how to fix things, I've always said this, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in another podcast we've talked about before, but there's really no compromise when it comes to certain issues. Mm-hmm. And I've used the example of abortion. How can an anti-abortionist and a pro-abortionist ever compromise? And some of these issues when it comes to guns, I think there can be compromise, but there are so many people on the far left and the far right that can't give that inch. And so this whole thing that has transpired again, 288 or 9, whichever it is, school shootings in the last 20 years, it doesn't seem to be getting better. It doesn't seem that we're learning from it. It doesn't seem that anything's changing. It just seems to get more horrific.
I think everybody, it should have struck them to the core, to the heart, is anybody dying from a needless shooting, whether it's in Chicago, whether it's in New York, whether it's out in a country stick somewhere in Deep Woods, East Texas, or whether wherever it is needless and should not have happened. Okay, because this goes back to the fundamentals. Let's be honest about it. This goes back to the Cain-Abel thing. You know, that's why the Bible puts it in. That's why it's in the Bible to discuss it. It goes back to that time there, that humanity has a dark side. You know, I will say this, and my wife gave a great quote that and this does not have to do anything with school shootings, but it does have to do with bad people being in charge of certain things. And she was at the Anne Frank POW camp where she was killed. There, 50,000 Soviet soldiers were tortured and executed there. Many other people were tortured and executed there. And the thing that she left is, there's good and bad in everybody. And if you do not believe that, then you failed in humanity. Because there is good and bad in everybody. It's just most of people in this world choose not to do the bad, you know.
Right.
And I think that's a good statement, because I think you're naive if you don't think there's good and bad in everybody.
Sure.
Does that mean that everybody is a shooter? No, that's not what I'm saying. But when we understand that, I think we can understand how we can find the ingredients to get somebody to that level of insanity, you know.
Yeah, and you know, it's from someone that, and both of us really have studied history, and me still teaching history at this point, is, you know, one of the things that we have a conflict is our government is supposed to protect the citizens. They're supposed to protect us from foreign and domestic, but also the citizens have certain rights that the government is supposed to kind of stay out of. So there's this pull and push all the time of how do we protect the citizens, but still give that right that we have to the freedom for citizens to, you know, to bear arms or to hunt or to protect themselves. And what can they protect themselves with is really the debate. There is a very small people on the left that would love to abolish all guns. And there's a very small people on the right that would love to say, hey, we should have bazookas and tanks, okay? Yeah. But the majority of people understand that there's self-protection, there's a Second Amendment right. Just how do we regulate it? And should it be regulated, and how it should be regulated? Should it be a state? Should it be a federal? Should it be by age? So I'm sure there's some of the things we're going to talk about. It's very important that we try to keep emotions down when you're discussing an issue like this. But man, when you see people innocently dying, especially babies, bruh.
Well, I will say this is, as soon as this happened, Coach, I put on my page, hey, this is the time to think about the families, and this is the time, you know, that I give my prayers out to them, because I prayed for them, you know, and some people take that as a derogatory term, and I never understood how that is. Just because maybe you don't believe in prayer and I do, how would that be derogatory? Because I don't judge how somebody else deals with things in their mind. I don't. That's how they do it. So, and I had a couple of people sit there and want to sling out, well, we need to act now, we need this type of legislation. Well, we all know that in haste, nothing really ever good comes out of haste decisions. It's very rare. There are a few times, but it's very rare. So we haven't even laid the first body into the ground yet. And I think maybe that should have been the focus and everything else. And then I said, hey, let's put this on my timeline later. And a few days later, I finally put out, said, hey, we're going to do this podcast. We're going to do this. And I got some notes on the backside, and I got very few on the front, but I got a lot on the backside. And then I got the two that wanted to tell me their opinion right then in their haste. Seems to me they have forgotten about the whole issue. So I just look at them as being completely freaking superficial, to be quite honest. And you're going to hear me say that word superficial a lot in this, because we're going to talk about these laws a second. And I think that's important that we talk about them, because there's some misnomers there. Because unfortunately, like we've said, is a lot of things are party driven. And I want to talk about the laws, and then we're going to get into this case of Uvalde. I want to talk about that a little bit and try not to paint anybody too bad, but there were some bad blunders in there and such. So first thing is and you referenced Steve Kerr from the Golden State Warriors head coach there. He came on and he made a passionate statement. In all his passion, I am completely concurrent with Steve Kerr. I agree with him. I think our legislators should have done better. He referenced that Mitch McConnell, and I'm not a big fan of Mitch McConnell, I'll be quite honest with you, but you know, he's selling this legislation for 2 years. I try to tie everything that in this last week, would it have changed the Uvalde shooting? And so this resolution, which is called HR 8, Coach, which I'll tell you about it here, is a bipartisan background check. And what it does is there's some loopholes at the gun show loophole that it would eliminate those loopholes from where they would have to do a background check. And it passed in the House in 2019. But this Uvalde shooter, it wouldn't have done a damn thing. And we're going to talk about that a second, because I personally think that this idea of universal background check is a party buzzword and everybody gets on it. We just had this, we'd have saved the lives. And no, we wouldn't have. It wouldn't have done a damn thing, because you and I have talked about this, Coach, is what does a background check do to somebody that's freaking 18 years old? What do you pull out of that?
Well, and I don't want to interrupt you, but I referenced to you and also referenced to someone else online that, look, I'm in the education system, okay? And we started a very early age of assessing, this is a good word that's always used in education now, assessing people for dyslexia, for mental, for not mental illness, but for depression, for learning disabilities, for ESL. Do they have enough English language? Because we have so many people here that their first language they learned was at their home, might have been Spanish. But what we haven't done really is got into any mental health evaluations. And now that we've had more upfronts with bullying and depression and people taking their certain medications before they take testing, because if somebody is actually considered to be ADHD, we want to make sure a day or two before that we check in with their family that, hey, are they on their medication? I mean, these are things that are talked about. So there are ways that we can possibly, but it's going to take legislation. It's going to take people taking their hands off of things and start maybe mental. I'm not saying this is my idea. I'm saying this is something that I've thought about, is when we start doing those first evaluations of people to find out about dyslexia and all that, could we not start some mental evaluations of part of that? Because we have an annual, what they call an ARD for people that have an annual review of kids that have certain disabilities, as they call them. And could that be one that by the time we're 18 years old that we have a little bit of a blueprint that this person, or 21 if that's the age that we go to with guns. But you're right, when a person's 18 years old and they have no credit report, I'm going to use this, they have no credit report because they don't have any credit, because they've never had to have credit, and then they go apply for something, they say, oh, we deny you because you don't have any credit. Because for 18 years, they're not supposed to have that. So it's the same way there. And how are we evaluating people to know that this person at 18 years and 1 day is okay mentally and can pass a background check when there's really no information available for that?
Right. So we're going to dive into this a second, because I think there's some legitimacy to the term universal background check, but it's going to take reconstructing the whole system, and that's not what HR 8 does. HR 8 just wants to close the loophole. So, Coach, you and I both purchase guns. When we purchase guns, we fill out an ATF form 4473. I've purchased a gun in Kansas. I've purchased a gun in Tennessee. I've purchased a gun in Michigan. I've purchased a gun in North Carolina. And I've purchased a gun in Texas. Some have a longer wait. Some have a short wait. All that. Each one, I fill out one of these. So when we go to this right here, because we want this universal background check, and there's a lot of talk been about mental health in there. I'm going to read you so you know, because what I think, to be honest, is the far left pushes this term because it doesn't affect them. They push this in gun control because they will never have to feel the effect of it. Whereas other solutions, like putting security in the schools, well, they would have to feel the effect of that. And so I think some jump on that bandwagon because they feel that it's never going to be solved. So if they don't have to feel the effect, it doesn't matter. But if we're going to do this, let's do it right. If we're going to hit universal background checks, the only spot on the freaking form 4473 is under F, under 21, that sits there and says, have you ever been adjudicated as a mental defective, or have you ever been committed to a mental institution?
Just say no. And
so if you lie and say no, okay. But this is the thing, we've talked as coaches. How many people do I know that's crazy? Well, I probably know about 12 people that I would say is batshit crazy. But how many people do I know that's been committed to a mental institution? Well, I don't know none. You know what I'm saying? I don't know any. And that's what the requirement is on this form, is that right there. That's the first issue. The second issue is if they're 18 or they're 19 or 20, like we said, what's prior to 18? And the Uvalde shooter was only 18 for like freaking 10 days at the max, you know, or a month. He was very short, 18. Your records are sealed under 18 because you're a minor. Your criminal records are, if the judge does that, and your records for mental health falls under HIPAA.
Right.
So if you don't divulge it, there's nothing there to check.
There has to be, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but you know this, and we discussed it. You are 100% correct. But what we have to do is, after 9/11, the reason that we had the issue of 9/11 when they come back and studied it was, yes, we had terrorists. They wanted to kill us. That's the culprit. Okay, we're not taking anything away from who did it. But all those agencies were not sharing information because they didn't want to, they didn't have to, and they weren't made to.
Yeah.
So until we have the medical facility, or excuse me, the medical community, the education community, anything that has to do with a kid that's 21 and back, until they actually, if that's ever possible, work together and coordinate, we're never going to have a real picture of a person's mental stability, criminal, background that they have. We're not. So we're pissing the wind and we're guessing.
I agree.
We're hoping.
Well, we're hoping.
Right.
And what I see is a lot of people say, well, this is my party's talking point. We're going to push this.
I had one tell me that yesterday.
I'm getting my feather in the cap because I'm the congressman, and this is our talking point. I passed a bill to save lives, and 2 weeks later we have another one because it didn't do shit.
Right.
That's what I see, is we wasted the paper and the time and effort. When I think we need to have something that's comprehensive that involves multiple things. I think this needs to be revised.
Sure.
I think that a judge...
Why hasn't it been?
Or why have it? I think honest people is the only ones going to fill it out right.
Right.
Or why, and we already saw, just because we just saw the Johnny Depp case, what honest people get and what people who lie get.
Right.
You know, $15 million. I mean, honest people is the only ones going to fill it out right.
And most people know that when you go to fill out an application for an apartment, or fill out an application for credit, or you fill out an application for a gun, people have done it. They say, hey, I can tell you exactly how to fill it out to make sure you get approved.
Yeah,
I've heard people say that, especially when I used to do collections. People knew that, how to get approved for something by filling it out a certain way. The loopholes that they have in it, and I hate to use the word loopholes because that is a political term that you hear all the time, that these gun show loopholes. I'm not talking about that kind of loophole. The loopholes I'm talking about is when you have a form that is just there for show.
Yep.
And the form is really not there to protect. Why is it not there to protect? From the NRA all the way up to the crazies on the left, the ACLU, let's just call it, all in that middle here, we are not doing what's best for all of us by allowing this to be the best we can come up with.
Right. This needs to be better.
Right.
The second thing on this form here, though, that it's going to require legislation that maybe when my little son goes downtown and I don't know, he does something stupid like drink underage, that it's not swept under the rug by the judge or the DA. And maybe that it's on here, because that's going to take a nationwide thing. And that's going to take that to be in there.
Yeah,
in order for this to be effective.
So who does the check on that? The FBI? The FBI is not checking with your local police departments or the state municipalities unless they enter that in themselves, right?
That's the deal. So the local police department enter it in, and it goes to the FBI, and they do the investigation. So you have the FBI that, if they do the investigation right, which I don't know, in the last 2 years, there ain't much I trust out of that group, you know what I'm saying, as a whole. The people who work there, I think, is pretty good, most of them. But we've seen a lot of blunders there. But does the local town put it in right? You know, does the local sheriff put it in right? Those are questions that have to be asked, because if you don't forget the shipyard shootings, that they were skipped twice by the locals in regard to that. So,
before we move on, I do want to say something about the Steve Kerr thing, since we referenced it. I didn't say anything about that. Steve Kerr is an amazing guy. Okay, he's a great father. He's a great coach. He's just a great guy.
Yeah.
But Steve Kerr is a little political, and I want to say maybe let's just say he is political, because this isn't the first time that Steve Kerr has got upset this was something he should have got upset about. He referenced the bill, maybe not the bill, but he also got really upset a few years ago when Trump came out and said President Trump at the time came out and said something about either a basketball player or a football player or something, and he pretty much said, Trump, stay out of it.
Yeah.
So it's not that he's non-political.
Yeah.
But what he was trying to do, and I felt it and so many others felt it, is he was saying a lot of things that we were feeling.
Yeah, I agree with it. I think his passion is truly there.
And now the last thing we moved, I was going to say there, where are the people that stand up for the politics of Black Lives Matter?
Yeah.
The Colin Kaepernick, the LeBron James, where are those people? You don't see anything about that unless it has to do with an African American being killed by a white police officer.
I will say LeBron did say something about the Uvalde shooting.
I didn't see it.
And my hat's off to you, LeBron.
Thank you.
And there were some Dallas Cowboys that spoke up. DeMarcus Lawrence did, and things of that nature. But so I'm going to kind of crush the HR 8 because maybe the reason why HR 8 hadn't been passed because it's worthless than the piece of paper that it's on, to be honest.
Yeah.
And that's probably the real reason why it hadn't been passed.
And you're right.
It wasn't political. It's a piece of shit legislation. So the next one, and I'm only going to cover this a second, is HR 1446 has been passed to the House. What it does is there's a loophole called the Charleston loophole, and there's a gap in there on the federal gun sales that moves from 3-day waiting period from some areas to moving them all to 10 days. I don't have a problem with that.
I don't either, really.
I do not have a problem with it. But I do have a problem with the rest of this part because the rest of it says if it exceeds that 10 business days, then the person purchasing the gun has to personally request to the FBI to finish it out. Well, who in the FBI? Who's the person?
Well, if they can't tell you in 10 days, then you shouldn't be getting one probably.
Well,
are they just busy?
Or the FBI just says, I'm just going to sit on them all, and then he won't ask, and I won't ever give them.
Well,
I think that's wrong.
It is wrong, and just something a little bit different that would give you to background exactly what you're saying, and to back it up is that we have a Freedom of Information Act.
Yep.
I have put in a request in our town close to us in Gilmer, Texas, for some information through the police department, and they said they will have that sent out to me within 10 business days. Guess what? When 14 days came around, I hadn't gotten anything because I thought they were mailing it. Oh, they couldn't find my request in, even though it went by fax and they received it. So I had to go back again and redo another one. And then they called me within one day and said, well, both of these are information that's going to have to go, one to the police and one to the city attorney to even see if we can approve the Freedom of Information.
Yeah.
So, yes, there's always going to be that going on. And you're right. Who knows at the FBI who they're going to protect and who they're not?
Exactly.
And next thing you know, we can't do that. It's still in the works. We're looking at it.
So to me, 1446, unless they change it, is hogwash. I like the 10 days, but the FBI thing.
So you and I like the 10 days, and we like the 21 maybe for
yeah,
guns?
I agree. And I'm a Second Amendment guy.
Sure.
I feel that I had a great mentor of mine, a sergeant major. He was sergeant major when I became a sergeant major. And my wife served with him, and I served with him. And he got out and retired, but he came up and he said, hey, 21, let's think about that especially for ARs and things like that. And, but any gun, he says, people will say, well, hold on, people in the military don't have to wait 21. Well, people in the military go through
been checked.
they go through 8 weeks of training with guns and
Yes.
basic training alone. Okay. They have taught to respect them in every shape, form, or fashion. And so that made a little bit of sense to me, to be honest. And I'm a guy that I can be swayed as I'm not stuck on this and not stuck on stupid all the time. I agree. Maybe 21 is the rational answer because a lot of these school shootings happen to be with people below.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this, and we talked this, is somebody willing to commit murder, ain't no law out there going to stop that.
No, and you're correct on that.
There's no murderer we found that goes, hey, dude, did you hesitate because you might have to go 30 days in jail for this.
Well,
none of that shit. No.
And no one has brought this up, and I'm driving down here today, and I started thinking about, why does this seem to be happening more and more now? Can I think of anything that happened in the past? And I started thinking about the UT bell tower guy. Mm-hmm. And that was in the 60s. I want to say the late 60s. And, he had a lot of mental illness that we find out. He'd killed, his parents or shot somebody at the house, went up there and decided that he was going to just take as many out before they took him out. And there's always going to be that people. The thing that I believe that a lot of people now, and I'm not agreeing or disagreeing or saying, wait a minute, we keep having the same reoccurrence with 2 or 3 different things. Number one, it is young people around 17 to 19 years old.
Yep.
Number 2, it's with assault type rifles, because I don't know the exact, I know it's not an automatic, they wouldn't live a day in a war with that rifle, but they're not fighting a war. And the third thing is there's been so many things that I've heard over and over and over again that when the police tries to come in contact with that person, that they're outgunned. I've been hearing that more and more, that they're outgunned when these people have these AR-15 or assault rifles or whatever they are. And so that's another issue. Why are they outgunned? Because you hear people all the time, defund the police, take away certain things from the police, and they don't want them to have SWAT type things. They don't want to have all these things that could make sure. But what we do get into is when these people, like in Uvalde, they tried to go in, the first, I believe there's 2 or 3 of them, I don't remember the number, and they were pretty much pushed back by an 8-year-old guy that just got a gun within a month because his weapon was so powerful to what they had.
Yeah, so we're going to dive all into this Uvalde thing here, but, you know, the 2 presidents back, they did a lot of legislation that pulled a lot of equipment away from the police forces. Regarding this here, right after the Uvalde shooting, the president signs a freaking darn declaration, executive order, and one of the sub-paragraphs in there is limiting piece of police equipment, restoring and expands on the Obama administration restrictions on the transfer of military equipment to the police forces.
We can't wait for our president to help us, okay?
Well, I mean, I'm just like, why would you do that? But I'm sitting here scratching my head on it. So let's go ahead and dive into Uvalde, and then let's go into some things that we think that might happen. And I'm going to beat the president up on this because he signed that right after this happened, 1. 2, there's everybody throwing out scenarios of what should happen, and he came out, his White House press secretary has come out and says he's not budging on putting people in the schools, hard in the schools. He's not down on it. All right. Why would you not lay everything out on the table? I'm a Second Amendment guy. Coach, when you talked about me not having my tank, that hurt my feelings, to be honest with you. I wanted to get me a Sherman one day and just tinker around with it and drive out in the pasture and have fun. But my God, why would you not lay everything out on the table and go, is this even winnable or not? Okay,
Sure.
It's not. Let's put this over here. Is this doable or not?
Why do we put that to we always say the will of the people.
Yeah.
You hear that a lot on the Democratic side, that we just want the will of the people. We want every voice heard. We want these things. Okay, well, why don't we put it to the people? When you go to an airport now, you feel so much more secure after 9/11 because of the security that's been put in place.
Yeah.
If anybody flew prior to 9/11 and they've flown after 9/11, it's like 2 different worlds. My kids have no idea what it used to be like to walk into an airport and go get on a plane.
Well, I remember flying to Germany in 1989. I flew to Germany, and walking down the airport was Polizei in a green jacket with a German Shepherd and a freaking Uzi strapped across the chest. And I was like, whoa, this is not America, because I just walked on the plane.
Sure.
I'm like, dude, when are you going to bring me my drinks,
Right. And another thing is, if you go to a courthouse, I've been to Smith County Courthouse many times, and you walk into the courthouse, you go through metal detectors. They have more than one door, but guess how many doors you can go in? You can go in one door at that courthouse, and at that one door, they have 3 to 4 officers, and one of them has a rifle, or excuse me, a shotgun. The other ones have their weapons on them, and you've got to go through there. You and I have been to sporting events.
Yep.
We've been to concerts recently. Anywhere you go where there's a mass of people,
Yep.
we protect them. But where we don't do it, and we want to push that we don't, is at every single school. The last thing I want to say, $40 billion Joe freaking come on Biden just sent to Ukraine, and everybody in the world,
Like that.
everybody in the
Like
world
that.
is on
Didn't
Ukraine.
Didn't even bat an eye at it.
Right.
Like that.
But we're on their side.
I
If
said
you
it,
take
make it
that
happen.
$40 billion and divide that by 89,000 public schools we have in America, that's $45,000 per school. And $45,000 at that school could put you a secure door, could get you a security system or some kind of system to see in. And why not?
Yeah, so regarding this here with the schools and all this other such, we need to dive into the Uvalde thing, but I'm sitting here going, what's the problem with us having an armed guard there? I don't understand.
I haven't heard an argument against it that makes any sense.
Except he said no, and the left doesn't like that. But I think it goes back to what I said, Coach, because they have skin in that game. They don't have skin in the other game, so it doesn't affect them. And I hate to be like that, but that's what it's sounding like, is either do my way that doesn't affect me, but it affects you, or don't do no way at all, is what it's sounding like. So let's get on with Uvalde. And so as we know, the young man that was supposed to graduate that either pulled himself out of school, or he was told he wasn't going to graduate, went out and shot his mom. Grandmother, excuse me, yes, his grandmother, and
in the face.
Shot her, stole the truck, drove, wrecked the truck real close by next to the funeral home, shot at the funeral home, then shot at the school. The first report we got, several reports we got, was the doors propped open by a teacher twice. Teacher says now that she closed it. It was propped open once, but she closed it afterward.
Suppose the lock didn't work.
But my question is, in the military, we have rules that we don't budge on. Why did you prop it open ever? Why did you ever go out that door if it's not meant for that? You know, that's the deal. It's a emergency exit only, kind of what they're supposed to be there for. So why are you bending the rules? Do you not think of the safety? Irregardless that you lawyered up and all that other stuff, those are legitimate questions that needs to be answered. And I think every school district needs to answer that. And I personally believe that if it's a student, they should be suspended if they see go out one of those emergency doors. One. Two, if it's a teacher and
fire them.
They need to be relieved on the spot. Whether they've been there freaking 2 weeks at the first of the year teaching, or they've been tenured for 30 years. Once you fire one, it will all be done.
Right.
And you know, that's why you have the rules.
Well, what are the things? Go ahead.
So I will say in the military, we have these things called standard operating procedures. And we use these, and what it is people have thought out, try to think out every scenario that could happen. And they put these procedures in place to prevent the catastrophe from happening. Well, the school thought them out because they put the damn emergency doors there.
Yeah.
Okay? So now, we always say whenever there's a failure of something, it's either you did not have a standard operating procedure or you didn't follow it. And if you didn't follow it, you deal with the individual.
Exactly.
If you didn't have one, you better wake up and go fix it and go make a procedure. So in this case here, okay, let's say if it was mechanically broken, then why was that not identified? You know, I don't know. I don't understand that, to be honest.
And how did he choose that? He chose that one door that had a problem. He got lucky, if that's the case. But you also got to think about it. Maybe it was most of the doors were open.
We don't know. It took him 12 minutes from the accident to get into the door. But let's say this. If the door would have been secured like it was supposed to be, we would have 18 or 19? I can't
19 kids.
We would have 19 kids and 2 teachers alive today, and we would have had a confrontation on the school lawn where he would have been killed right there.
And the conversation would still be, what in the world is going on for this guy
It
being
still
there?
would have been, yes.
But it wouldn't have been about the death of
But
these
we would have
kids.
saved kids' lives. We would have saved kids' lives there. And then the second thing, it took from 12:15, 19 police officers were inside the building, and it took them to 12:50 to execute the mission of knocking the door down. And supposedly at 12:15, they had all the equipment, and the 911 calls were going on. Mm-hmm. And now, from what I understand, I did not know this, there is a federal statute that an officer involved on the scene does not have to speak to the correspondent agencies. I heard that yesterday.
If it's a school.
I don't know if it's a school.
Okay, because I know a lot of things changed after Columbine where they don't have to wait, you go.
No. No, I'm saying on the investigation side.
Oh, I got you.
That if you're the Department of State of Texas and you're investigating, I don't have to talk to you because I was involved in the scene.
I got you.
And so that's, from what I understand, that's what the incident commander's doing. He's like, I'm lawyering up, or I'm just not talking to you.
Yeah, I did see, speaking of that real quick, I listened to it, didn't hear it, but it was on CNN or MSNBC. I was flipping channels where they actually went to his home or somewhere where he was coming out of, and he just said, I'm going to speak soon, but right now it's not the time until everyone's buried, pretty much. That's what he was saying.
Okay,
everyone's
I can buy that.
So, I mean, let him have it. I don't think he's going to lose his job at the least.
At the least. And what I will say is, 40 minutes, what are we doing there? You know, please do not misunderstand me, is we don't know who all had the information, if it's just him or all 19. I cannot believe, on the way I know how structure of commands normally work, that all 19 really knew all the 911 calls. But if he knew the 911 calls and hesitated, that's an issue. If he didn't know the 911 calls, that's different. That is different. it don't make anybody come back to life, but that is different because he wasn't armed with all the intelligence, okay? But if he was armed with all the intelligence, then we got issues there regarding that. And then maybe 19 people wouldn't have died.
Sure.
You know, we don't know, but maybe not. But Coach, to me personally, a standard operation procedure of whenever there's a gunfire in the town, period, that there's somebody that goes and ensures all doors are secure, 1. 2, armed freaking police
Well, we
officer
have that in school.
at every freaking entrance, armed to the teeth, would have solved a lot of this.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know.
there's a few things I want to unpack here, but number one, when I worked in public school, we had those in place that you would secure your door, get everybody away from the window so
Yep.
nobody could see you in there, and everybody was quiet and whatever. Those are certain things. But there needs to be more done. We'll talk about that. But I want to talk about a few things. Number one, in the education system, being in school, we're supposed to have a secure place for them to learn.
Yeah.
Now, what the secure place for people to learn is going to be defined differently than by what you believe. Okay. To me, you protect at all cost, because there's so many places that you go to on Friday nights when I was coaching that there are armed police officers at every stadium. Not just one, numerous.
Yes.
But how many armed policemen are on every campus in Texas? Say East Texas, say South Texas. I mean, we have a little place here in Pittsburgh where we're doing this from today that has, what, 1 officer per school?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, what is the problem of not securing a school very similar to how you secure a perimeter?
Yeah.
Always. Not just when something comes up. Oh, it's cost or whatever. Look, man, y'all charge me so much for my school taxes in White House, Texas. It's literally insane. It's over $1,000 a month for my taxes for White House ISD.
Yeah.
Okay, there's plenty of money to do this.
Yep.
But what we want to do is allocate those money to STAR and benchmarks and things like that, and stadiums and
Football
certain
stadiums.
things. Right.
Football stadiums.
But we won't put $250,000 into protecting a school, but we'll put in $25 million for a stadium. Okay. Second thing, when we hear as parents that you have to think about this as a perimeter. This went on for over an hour. That no one can go in, and then we find out they're inside, but they won't go into a classroom. People are being tackled outside from saving their own, but then some do get in. So some people got to go in that school even after a shooting was going on because it wasn't locked down.
Yeah.
Okay. They went in and saved their, and I'm not going to say one bad thing about a parent that went in and saved their kid.
No,
I
I
can't
agree.
do it. I just can't do it. But Oliveris from the DPS, it's shameful. Now, I don't know if he had a slip of the tongue, but I hope he's been reprimanded for that and will never be able to speak in public again if he did. When he said, and they asked him about that time and all those things going on, he said, look, if we would have sent those men in there, they could have been killed.
Okay.
I literally did not believe that I heard correctly and went back and rewound it.
What's the saying? Protect and serve.
Right.
Protect and serve. I'm sorry, I'm from the military, and you know what? There would not have been 45 minutes waiting. I can tell you that right now. Do not misunderstand me. There are people who freeze on the battlefield.
Yes.
We got that. I understand that. But out of 19, that's
No.
one.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, if you ain't ever watched Band of Brothers episode 7, when they relieve the commander on the battlefield, he winds up dying later.
Yeah.
You need to watch that because he froze and was getting people killed, i.e. the school, and that's when somebody goes, I'm in charge now.
Yeah.
See you later, dude. You keep your ass here. We're going in. And yes, maybe someone would have died, but my God, not a freaking little 8-year-old. And I don't care if there was one 8-year-old in that freaking schoolroom and there was 19 guys out on the outside. I know this is going to sound cold, and 18 guys died, and that one 8-year-old lived. That was a mission success. I hate to break the news
Right.
to you.
Yeah. And second thing that I saw was some videos, some cell phone videos of a lady recording. And there's 2 officers standing there talking. One's on his cell phone, one's just talking to his little mic, walking around, telling them to back up, back up, back up. And the gentleman actually says, look, man, give me your gun
Yeah.
and vest. I will go in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you realize there's kids in there?
Yeah.
And they're just standing there waiting for an order. When is it, now this is my question. You've been in the military. This is not the military. This is the police. So of course they're not as prepared as the military for certain things. But could you ever imagine anybody that you've been around saying we're going to wait back as kids are being slaughtered. American kids on American campuses on a public school in Texas, the state of Texas, brother.
Well, I'm going to say this is I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to that officer that was guarding the parking lot. They were assigned that mission. They felt that 19 people were in there doing their job.
Gotcha.
And that wasn't his role, and he had confidence in what the 19 people inside were doing. That's my feelings. And from that perspective, I understand that because everybody has different missions, and as soon as you compromise your mission to go, all Katie goes, bars the door, then you really compromise a lot. It could go more traumatic. The deal is he had confidence they would do something, and unfortunately the leader didn't do something, apparently. Now, there may be some more circumstances that we don't know about, but I agree with you. You said it up front. One guy that's barely been trained on an AR-15, now it's overwhelming fire with 19 guys, but I promise you every one of them has probably fired an AR-15 at least once or twice and understand it, and fired multiple other guns. Most people that I know that are police officers have fired multiple guns many times, unlike the lady who grabbed her taser, who thought she grabbed her taser and her gun. They didn't train. Most of them are very confident in that. But it takes leadership.
I can't imagine 17 or 18 of them standing around and one holding them back and they're okay.
I know
with
that's the optics look horrible, and is exacerbated by the fact that they waited 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And what's a shame is I just listened to the Tulsa shooting thing, and like within a matter of less than a couple of minutes, it was defused. Now he took his own life, but they were already in there in a matter of a couple of minutes. Think about how many little kids would be able to sit there, and we would be going through emotional counseling right now instead of, we'll never know what they.
Well, some are going to be going through it, and this is one of the things that broke my heart was they interviewed one of the 10-year-olds that was in the class with his buddies, and he wanted to be interviewed. And I'm going to tell you right now, I wish more parents would do something, and I want to bring this up at the end of this about Emmett Till. Don't let me forget, because there's something that changes something, and it's called a visual. But this kid said that he grabbed and wiped blood off of a friend of his that was dead and put it on his face and acted dead, so he wouldn't be shot. There's no, you talking about, we got this bullshit PTSD, not from the military, not from police officers, not from, you can go down a real list, but we got people getting PTSD disability across this country.
That kid will never bullshit. That kid will never be the same.
And this kid will never be the same. And this kid is trying to get a story out of his friends and what they went through. But what I want that, if anybody knows the story of Emmett Till, this is what came across the other day in my brain, and I started talking to my wife about it. I said, you know what changed a lot in the civil rights movement was the visual when Emmett Till's mother said, what I'm going to do is I want to have an open casket, because they beat Emmett Till to death for what we come to find out decades later was a fake catcall. And he was beat up to death by people that were white because he was black, supposedly catcalling at a white woman. And the mother said, this has to end, and what we're going to do is we're going to leave this casket. You can type it in right now, Emmett Till, and you see that face. I wish a parent or two or three or four would have had an open casket funeral of their dead babies.
Yeah.
And said, this is what we got.
And for those that didn't watch the majority of it, a lot of parents had to give DNA because they couldn't recognize the faces, because the faces were shot. Had to give DNA just to identify them. We got to move on this part here. So what we need to move on and talk about is what would work. And I'm talking specifically the Uvalde shooting, but there's multiple other shootings, and those may not necessarily be the best things for those shootings. But we got everything on the table, Coach.
All right.
We got everything on the
I'll
table.
start one. You want to start one? However you want to do it.
Yeah, you go ahead. Start one.
I think about this. Remember when we first learned how to drive?
Yep.
We couldn't drive by ourselves, could we?
Nope.
How did we drive? How did we learn to drive?
I drove with a teacher on the side that I scared the living hell out of every time I stopped.
You got to ride with an adult. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if we're going to say that a person goes hunting,
yep.
Okay, they cannot purchase any kind of weapon at all till you're 21. And any type of weapon that you use must be an adult's weapon, and they must be with you when you use that weapon. That's just something I'm throwing out there. So if a person goes hunting at the age of 19, they must be with an adult, and that adult has a weapon that they can use, and they both are responsible for each other's actions. Because you can't buy a weapon until you're 21 years old. If you have one at 19, 20, 18, or 17, two things are going to happen. Number one, you're breaking the law, and number two, the person that did not allow that to be locked up is as responsible as you for the crime.
Okay. So, I think about my kids because all of them have been around guns that's been taught.
Most kids haven't.
Yeah, I got that. So, there was a proposal for moving the age to 21. I agree with that. I like it, but there is a hiccup here. The California District Court ruled it unconstitutional, put an age limit on guns like that. So they ruled it. It was a very liberal court. It was not circuit court. Now, was that the wording, and we just need
It's called legislation. We breed it.
or do we need to codify the wording a little better?
Could be.
But if not, that's a stumbling block. But I agree with 21. Nobody should be able to buy a gun until you're 21.
Well, let's
So-
ask the question this. If we were to put a nationwide referendum for next time we have an election, it's a nationwide election, and we have that everybody decides, do we want to have the age of somebody owning a gun at 18 or 21, and let the majority, I guarantee it would be 80% would say 21 over 18.
Yep.
And
So-
you know what? Maybe we should listen to the people sometimes.
I will say, I know a lot of kids that are in the 16, 17, 18-year-old group that they could handle a gun quite well.
I had my first, at 14, I got a 410 for my birthday.
They were raised around, they were taught, they were properly schooled and everything else.
But where was that gun?
Yeah, but it was secured somewhere, and
So
I agree with that.
So if I took that gun to Pittsburgh High School when I was 15 years old and shot it up, I'm saying that not only am I going to be prosecuted as an adult for murder, but my parents, for allowing me to have access to that gun, should be liable also.
Well, I think we're going through that with that Michigan shooting a year back, with that part. Those two parents are in jail for that.
Right.
They're going through that. But I'm going to also say, when you and I went through high school, we had friends that drove around with two guns in the back of the window all the time. And the
Right.
principal goes, "Oh, what do you got?" And it wasn't an issue.
Yeah, but
So-
one of the things I have progressed a little bit on, and I hate to use the word progress because everybody's going to call me, a liberal loving media guy, is that things are not the same as they were in 1970.
No, I agree with that.
1980.
I agree with that. So the next thing I said 21. I agree with that. I do not agree with a complete ban of anything. I don't agree with that. I do agree with retooling the universal background check to make it effective, where it doesn't punish the innocent person, but hopefully it catches some things that we need to do. But that also requires retooling the HIPAA, retooling the mental health aspect of it. Maybe something more needs to be put on there. Hey, did you just beat somebody the other day because you threw a temper tantrum? Maybe that needs to be in there, besides just being admitted to a mental health institution. I think
Sure.
that needs to be retooled a little bit. Does that punish the innocent person? No, it doesn't. It doesn't punish a law-abiding citizen.
So, I like to bounce it back and forth like
Yep.
you do with me. So the
Yep.
tennis ball came in over here, and I'm going to hit it back real quick.
Yep.
And when we say I don't believe there should be any kind of ban on any weapon, there are bans on some weapons already.
Yes, well, there are on fully automatics.
And they are on bazookas, and you can't have a shouldered rocket. So there are banned on certain weapons.
But you can have a flamethrower.
Right. But I'm saying, why are there banned on certain and not on others, is because some people believe that those are something a citizen should not have.
Yeah.
So as a progressing country, that we're not in, 1910, or we're not in 1810, and we're in 2020, some people look at weapons differently. And over the last 50 to 60 years, some weapons have been taken out of population as an automatic weapon.
Yeah, so
Like a machine gun.
You can't have a machine gun unless you have a certain level of
So
classification.
should we say that that's okay?
What's that? No, I think the current weapons that are out there right now are okay. I don't see a problem with those. I just don't think you need to. I don't think you need to add an M60 or something like that to it. No, I don't agree with that.
Sure.
They're already not for the common person can get those.
Is
So-
there really that much difference? You know this militarily.
Yeah.
Now, yes, if you're on the battlefield, there's a difference between an AR-15 and an Uzi, okay?
Yeah, AR-15 and M4, which
M4, that's right.
M4 or it used to be an M16. M16 used to shoot a fully automatic. The military even went away from the fully automatic and went to the 3-round burst, because we found out when people get nervous, they pull
Yeah.
that trigger and they're like,
Shoots
oh
off.
shit, man, you're running out of bullets real
So,
quick.
so educate us all. This
Yep.
is something that I do want to know, and I think a lot of people would like. If you have 20, I don't know, this, is it a 10-second, 20-second, 30-second, whatever? The difference of the M5 is what you call it?
M4.
M4
Yep.
and an AR-15, if say at a 10-second, if you just try to shoot as many as you possibly can, what is the difference maybe?
The difference is this here. For an M4, you got to go. For an M4, you go.
Right. So you're getting 3 to 1 pretty
Yep.
much. Okay.
Yep.
That's all right.
Yep. That's the difference. Is you get a 3-round burst for every time you pull the trigger, and you can pull it as fast as you need to pull it, but it'll spit out a 3-round burst till you can.
Now, are they the same type of bullet?
It's the exact same type.
Okay, so-
the difference is in the civilian world though is, so in the Army we use full metal jackets,
Okay.
and this is where people that don't know what the hell they're talking about start getting in there and go, well, you know, it's a high powerful bullet. Hell, freaking 223 is a little bitty round, man, and the 223 is smaller than my freaking pinky fingernail almost.
It's
So
just the amount of rounds coming out.
it's the amount, but it tumbles because we use full metal jackets.
Right.
Because of the Geneva Convention, we can't use hollow point. In the civilian world, you can buy a hollow point.
That's all I have in my handgun.
Most people in home defense.
We're blowing out
weapons-
lungs now, buddy.
Yeah, because, you know, a full metal jacket will really do that, unless, whatever, dude. That's one that he said, and the second one he said was, well, back in the old days, it was outlawed to have cannons. No, it wasn't. That was never even codified in a freaking law until like in the mid-1900s.
I don't listen to him.
I mean, it's just gibberish that comes.
Can I tell you real quick?
It's just defecation that comes out of his mouth.
When I tell you what, when he says something that I know is a little cuckoo, which is
Yep.
a lot, I just wait for the press secretary to clean it up later.
Yeah, it's just oral defecation coming out of his
All right,
mouth.
so back and forth. Go
yeah.
ahead.
So we talked a little bit about the background check. We talked a little bit about, hey, you know, we put a restriction, put 21 on there, clean up the background check, and understand to clean up the background check to do it right, where it doesn't infringe, but it identifies and it puts them off to the side. That won't be something done like that. That won't be something you just sign and do like that. That's something that would take a couple of years to get down into the legal system to go,
Well-
hey, I'm a minor. I just got caught doing this, throwing a rock through the window downtown supermarket because the girlfriend broke up with me. For it to be put in, hey, that's in his record now. Sorry, it was a little childish thing, but it's in your record now.
All right, so you bounce this to me. I have something.
So what do you got?
I truly believe that people like Cole Hefner
Yeah.
and people in Texas that are Republicans, I'm gonna get on them a little bit.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
Cole Hefner, loved his family my whole life. Okay, but this becomes a situation where you have to get off of something you're gonna die on.
Yeah.
Okay, because anytime that we hear these words back from our founders about compromise, we always think as somebody that has an ideology that means the other person has to give a little bit and then I'll compromise and say, okay, we're good.
Yeah.
But what a compromise means is we both have to do something.
Yeah, you're going to have to give a little.
Right. So there is something that I believe can be done, and I talked about just a little bit earlier, is the mental health evaluations needs to start a whole lot younger. If we're going to use that and say that is what every person that walks into a facility and kills innocent people has some type of mental problem. Okay.
But the left doesn't want any form of the mental. They don't want to touch that. They want to leave that to the Republican side.
No, I don't think that's 100% correct. I think what they've done, they jump over it because of emotions when something like this happens and say they go straight for the guns.
Yeah.
But I think what we have to do as a conservatives is we have to look at the gun part. And what I'm saying is they have to look at the mental health part, okay, as these are issues. Okay, guns don't kill, people do. Well, you know, whatever. Bad people that have mental illness that grab a bad gun are going to do a whole lot more damage than somebody going there with a slingshot, okay?
Yeah.
We do have to open up the conversation. Second thing I believe that they need to do is quit looking at education as numbers and testing and look at education as kids being prepared for the real world. Mm-hmm. And being prepared for the real world means you protect those dang kids at all costs.
Yeah.
And let those kids get inside and learn math, English, social studies, science, to prepare them in a new world, which that new world is what? A global world. Mm-hmm. We are so far down on the list in education, it's not even funny. We're not even a top 20 in anything anymore. Mm-hmm. And we're supposed to be the greatest nation in the world. The freedoms that everybody comes here that they want, some of those freedoms might have to be lessened a little bit to protect us all. I'm not saying the Second Amendment needs to be revised, it needs to be amended.
Yeah.
I'm not saying any of that. But there are regulations on every damn thing I do in this country. for the types of food I can buy, how much I can buy at a grocery store, how fast I can go on a freeway, how much of something I can put into my property, how much taxes I can go down the list. So don't give me the crap that we don't regulate because it says we have a Second Amendment right. My First Amendment to me is more important than anything.
Well,
Off the second, you don't have a first. Great.
I think when you compromise one, you're starting to compromise the other two.
Sure.
That's just me.
Sure, and maybe we do, because we compromise freedom of speech, we've compromised freedom of religion, freedom from religion, we've done all that. It's called we've progressed. So are we just going to say the hill I'm going to die on is the Second Amendment?
So I think the Second Amendment's there, and I put it out, unless we're going to get 290 congressmen and we're going to get 67 senators and we're going to get 38 freaking governors to agree on something, then the Second Amendment's always going to be there. Does that mean you got to have the machine gun and all this other stuff? But I'm going to throw a ball back to you here real quick. I think the one thing that can be done, I don't think any one thing will solve everything, but I think you will drop it down to neutral real quick, and instead of being in fifth gear, is you just put armed freaking retired police officers, armed veterans who has the authority to shoot at every entrance in a school. You move the entrances down to be few. That does a couple of things. It gives respect back to the law enforcement, one, and that is direly needed in our country. Two,
not many people trust, not all people trust right now.
Two,
That's right.
you have people there that is a major deterrence. And this is something I've said, and we don't have a lot of time, but when you talked about the perimeter effect. We used to talk about, hey, we're going to put triple strand concertina wire so nobody get over it. Triple strand concertina wire in Griffin in a squad of 9 can blow through in about 10 seconds, okay? It has to have eyes on it. So any defense has to have eyes or has to have boots on the ground. I said at the beginning of this, if you want to solve this problem, you have to treat it like war, and not war on drugs, and not war on alcohol, but like World War II, and you have to come up with multiple solutions. But one of the biggest nukes that you could drop on this thing is put armed people there, because that will deterrence. Everybody goes to the softer side. Not too many people want to run up to the hardest freaking fortification and go, I'm just going to chip away at that.
And I want to piggyback on it. How many times do you see people breaking in to banks?
Very rare.
Very rare. The bank robbery nowadays is almost impossible.
They happen, but it's very rare.
There's 2 reasons why for it. Number one, there's always a security guy there with a gun in the front. And there's one way in and one way out in most banks. There's not many banks anymore that have 2 ways in and out, like the old school Pittsburgh National Bank where you can go in both sides, okay? And number 2, video surveillance.
Yeah.
Why do we not have, okay, right now, I've been in the schools in Tyler ISD that you walk into the principal's office and he can see everything. The minute that something starts going down in the school, why can't the police immediately hit a button and see that at their location, at their main office, and say, okay, the guy is in classroom A, 7 steps from here.
Exactly.
And we need to go in.
Coach, it costs me $14 a month to maintain visual on the Griffin Ponderosa from all angles. $14 a month, and I got more cameras than I know what to do with. And I can see everything.
How much does Ring cost?
I don't know. I don't run Ring. I run a different system.
Okay.
But
how much does your system cost?
$14 a month. Initially, it cost me $1,500. Back when it was expensive, now it costs me about $800.
Well, somebody came out to me that I know and said for about $250, they could put a camera at my front door and my back door, put one in my garage or my carport, and one seeing out anybody driving up my driveway for about $300. It's going to cost me $19.95 a month to monitor it from there on.
I got 2 more cameras now. I'm just throwing it out there. But anyway.
But what I'm telling you is this, Bet, we could take Pittsburgh High School, just a high school, let's just say, and you and I have been on that campus many times, okay? And we're going to surveil that thing for less than $10,000.
Yes.
And put a camera everywhere.
Well, $10,000, and then you need it's the concertina wire. You need a dedicated person looking. Right. Not a dedicated person doing this.
But what I'm saying...
Not a dedicated person doing this.
No, what I'm saying is this, that we could have it there, and we all know Officer Rogers. We grew up with it.
Yeah.
Let's say he's there looking at it 8 hours while the whole thing. But when something goes down, it's taken away from Rogers or it's added to him. That immediately there's a phone call that comes through and say, okay, we've got a breach now. Someone is on campus with a possible gun. And Pittsburgh Police Department then pulls it up and they can look at the whole campus and go, okay, officers, when you arrive, there's a guy with a gun going in the back here. This is where he's at.
So
What's wrong with doing that?
Let me explain this. When I was in Germany in 2012, we went on a tour to Nuremberg, Germany. And we went with the local law enforcement to see what our soldiers go to and where they get in trouble at, the trouble spots. They took us to the red light district. They took us to everything down there. Then they took us in the police station. And he goes, let me show you something. He said, your soldiers come down here on the train. He says, that camera right there, watch. We'll follow this guy right here. I followed this dude all the way through town to the red light district. Now, is this big brother watching you? It is. But you know what? I went through 15 freaking cameras with this dude. We followed this dude through 15 cameras, picking him up. Now, that takes a person dedicated watching them also, watching the cameras. But once it's notified that from the local school, we got somebody sitting outside that doesn't fit the ring-in procedures.
Right.
The law enforcement can zoom in on them, see what they got, send the tax squad. Oh, we already know the school
Okay.
diagram. Hold
I
on.
know we're getting on
Yeah.
time. I don't care. We've talked about our congressmen. We've talked about our local people like Cole Hefner,
Yep.
things like that. But you know another thing I want to throw out there? I know 3 people that listen to this, or have said they listen to it, that are school board members. One just got elected. I'm not going to call him out. But when your school board spends every bit of their time and energy doing 2 things. Number one, our STAR scores and assessments.
Yep.
And how much money are we making from our school activities being sports? You need to stop the bullshit and realize that if you don't protect a kid, you're great. If it doesn't happen in year 1, year 10, year 12, year 15 of a plan you have, but it happens on one Tuesday and 21 people die, and you didn't have a plan, and you didn't have surveillance, and you didn't have an officer, and you didn't have a perimeter, and you didn't have security, then you should not be a part of a school board.
So I want to talk one thing here. I used to watch police movies, and you would always hear where they say, well, he's from the district, and he's from here, and it's territory. And I used to believe that's just a bunch of police hogwash. And I will not call any names out, and I will not call the school district out, but I will say this. I've heard some rumors that certain schools don't talk with their very own police department. And I'm like,
Bureaucracy.
What the hell is that? The school, children first, shut the flip up, get over your ego. Second, I sit there and watched on TV where they describe that, hey, there's federal funding for the schools to be linked with local police departments. They just got to hop on the pony and do it. You know,
There's been this thing.
federal funding. I mean, so it's free.
Well, you know what? I'm going to put this on some of our politicians in the state of Texas that refuse to take federal funding because once they take it, they feel like they then have to answer to Big Brother. That's not what's protecting the citizens of Texas or the students is best when you put politics involved in it.
So we're getting close on time here.
Sure.
We've already passed it, but to be honest, is we kind of just really what we wanted to do is for the people of Uvalde, there's nothing I can ever say that make you feel better. But I will say that we are thinking of you, and our hearts go out to you, and not just Uvalde, but any freaking area that has a shooting that those things shouldn't be happening. That's not what the intent. That's not what's supposed to happen. Our hearts go out on that part. The other thing I will say is we hope we shed some light on laws, and because some laws that are the cure-all, that hey, this is the grand slam. If you just sign this, you know, I'm gonna talk to the governor and try to embarrass him and say, if you'd have just signed this, we wouldn't have had this because I want to be governor. It's some horse shit. Peel back and read the law itself. I did. I read the law and I'm like, that's what you were griping about? So I am all for some change and I am all for some results. But what I am not for is to rush to failure to have the same shit we had before you signed the damn thing because they don't do nothing. So all these people that want to go, we need action that's legitimate. And like World War II, it needs to be multiple things. It needs to be revision of how we do the 4473. It needs to be how that right there is revised all the way down to the gnat's ass. It needs to be where we put people in schools to protect our loved ones that are our future for our community. It needs to be maybe that we repeal up to the age of 21. Does that mean I'm anti-gun? Hell no, man. I got an arsenal. I know what I got, man.
You can be pro-gun and
I
have
just got some-
legislation that makes sense.
I just got common sense.
Right.
That, hey, I'm willing to budge. Let's do it. And that's not taking anybody's rights away.
Right. Man.
That's making legitimate things that will produce legitimate, tangible results. That's what we want. And so,
the last thing I want to say on this is we always hear our hearts and our prayers go out to you. And you know what? I'm a very religious person. I went to a Baptist seminary and got both degrees in it. Okay, but I'm with some of those people where I'm tired of hearing "let's pray" and let's hear our deepest sympathies, and then nothing happens. We must act. This has got to stop. It went from Columbine. We had over 100. Then it went to over 200. We're reaching almost 300 school shootings since Columbine.
Yep.
And it seems like to me, we're not learning anything. It's just getting worse. It's getting more political. It's getting more one side against the other. We owe it to the memories of those dead people to stop just praying and expecting something great to happen because we pray for your peace after you are burying your babies. Yeah. We just pray that you have peace now that your babies are dead. And somebody's babies is going to die in the next 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days because we don't act. And I know what you say, don't do something hastily, but we got to quit waiting months, years, and decades before another 9/11 happens, before somebody sings Kumbaya on the steps. Because what we did not learn from then was every agency must act together to stop terrorist attacks. And every agency in the state of Texas and every agency in the United States must share information on how to protect our kids on a campus. And until they do that, it's going to continue to happen.
I agree with that. I will say, immediately there's not nothing that any of us can do except wish that they didn't have to go through that.
And I don't want to hear these things anymore. And I love when I get somebody on the backside that sends me information that was an ex-police officer. And I respect this gentleman so much. But on day one, when I posted, I was so emotional. He said, well, you got to wait, you got to wait, you got to wait. And I said, no, what happened here is ridiculous, these hours that waited. And then a couple of days later, he sent me another one and said, you know what? You're right. These guys did not do what they're supposed to do. But what we need to do is take people that's been involved in security, military, and police and say, look, we've got to work together to make sure this doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I think when there's an incident like this, I've been around the military where we investigate everything. And we investigate the heck out of it. We allow some time to grieve, and then we put the investigating officers in there. And no stone is unturned. Mm-hmm. And that's how, as we're just seeing the ugly truth of Uvalde. There's a lot of ugliness in that. I
want the ugliness to be seen. That's what I was saying earlier. And I can't leave. I'm this whole way driving here. I said, this cannot go out of me. I want my Emmett Till moment. I want somebody to release, how we releasing stuff out of the Supreme Court, how people release stuff from, publication from the White House. I want someone to release some photos. I want it to be a parent to release some photos of their dead child blown into pieces. If it takes it to do it, I want an Emmett Till moment. I do not want to bury any more kids because it's not bad enough. I had people around me, say this. I don't want to talk about this anymore. I don't want to see this anymore. Well, by God, I want to hear it. I want to see it. I want it to be in our, I want people jumping from those buildings on 9/11 when the media just started wiping that out so we didn't see it.
Yeah.
Then it wasn't so bad.
The ugly truth needs to be seen.
I want my Emmett Till. I want the prayer man jumping out of the tower. And I want these people to show us some dead people, because that's when things get done in this country, when it's enough is enough.
Yeah.
That's just me.
So with all this here, we want to hear your comments on this, and there's nothing I can say to the families, and I just wish they didn't go through this, to be honest.
We failed you. As citizens of this country, we are failing our children.
And I think we just need to have some collaboration. And any side that says, especially any side that's in power that says, we're not even going to talk about this, I'm like, why would you not? Why would you not? That just shows you're not willing to come to the table. So we got to go because we have blown this time up. From the coach
to the vet.
Stay tuned, stay tuned, stay tuned.